Hi all, this week we're going to take a look at what's required during week 4's discussion. And during this week, you're going to have to list your materials that you're going to need for this lesson. You'll have to develop your activity, activating strategy, your bell ringer, sometimes it's called a warm-up. You'll have to let me know how long that's going to take, and then your anticipatory hook. And again, tell me how long that's going to take, your instruction and the timing, and then your group format. Again, as always, I want to point out just a couple things to you on the TFC template, and then we're going to go over all of this in a little bit more detail. So materials, you want to tell me what do you need for the lesson, and you want to make sure you get everything in there, and you want to link anything that you can. If you have an outside PowerPoint or a Canva presentation, you want to make sure it's linked in there and that we can access those. Now your activating strategy, your bell ringer, what do you want students to do as they're entering the room to already get them focused on their learning? And then our anticipatory set, your hook as we call it. How will you engage student interest in the content of the lesson and use knowledge of students' academic, social, and cultural characteristics here? And then our instruction. This is where you're going to provide the specific details of the lesson content and delivery. This tends to be the longest part of the lesson. And you can list it in paragraph form. Some people do it sequentially by enumerating steps. That's a personal preference, but we need you to be very specific in what you're going to do. I should be able to visualize the entire lesson start to finish just by reading through your plan. So this whole section, as we talked about, there's the 3 elements that are introduced in scaffolding. I do, you do, we do. And this section of your lesson plan is the I do. This is what you are doing as a teacher, what you are demonstrating or showing the students, preparing them for their learning. And we'll take care of the we do and you do piece of it next week. And in here, we want to encourage those higher level thinking and the problem solving. So this would be a really good place to put those higher level thinking questions you developed from last week. You want to give specifics here, including the technology you're going to use. If you're using more than one grouping format, be sure to include each format and when it should be used. And here you've got ideas. Your whole group format, if it's a class lecture, maybe they're working in small groups, maybe students are working individually, or maybe they're working think, pair, share groups. So you want to make sure that you've highlighted the group formats they're using and make sure that you're addressing those in the lesson. So let's get into the details here. So the materials, you really need to think through everything that you're going to need for this lesson. Now this can be written in a list form, but we want it to be very specific. For example, if you have a book that you're using in the lesson, give the title, the author, and the publication year. If there's a link because it's read aloud, if you're in elementary and it's read aloud on YouTube, you can do the link in there as well, but we want to know specifically what's being used. Now, your bell ringer. Got to think through what are students going to be doing when they enter into the classroom. And you've got to think through those transitions that are going to happen. For example, are they going to be working on a daily oral language book, some sort of morning or board work? Are they going to have a brain break? Sometimes if you have them in a gym class or an outside room, you can have them walking laps or stretching, journal writing, a math problem of the day to get them started. But then you move on to the hook, and the hook is your attention getter. And this should be generating student interest in what you're going to teach today before you even say a word about it. And it has to be interesting. It creates that need to know in the students and develops readiness for that instruction to follow. Now, we want it to relate to previous learning. So we want the students to be able to connect their ideas together. And this is something that's going to have all students involved, not just 1 or 2. And it's a good way to introduce the lesson objective. So possible strategies, maybe you show some sort of a picture or an icon and ask their responses, or an anticipation guide, a KWL chart. Maybe you're giving a personal story or an experience, or showing a cartoon, not just a video on the screen. Maybe you're holding a discussion about a movie, a book, or a TV show, or a famous person that relates back to your lesson. Or if it's in science, maybe a quick demonstration or experiment. If you're in history or language arts, maybe you're reading a short article or a story or a quote or a poem. You could also play guessing games such as who am I or what am I, or seek responses to open-ended questions, but you're involving students in a problem to be solved. So think about things. Can you imagine seeing a volcano erupt? Write 5 things you might see, or write everything that comes to mind when I say the word quadrilateral. Or what 3 causes were of the Renaissance in Northern Europe? Which do you think was the most important? An anticipatory set, though, is not a open up your book to page 42. That's not what it is. Or it's not, here's how we're going to work out this problem. Or get out your homework from last night. Or let's go through everything we learned yesterday. Those are not anticipatory sets. You got to make sure that you actually are engaging the student's interest in tying into the lesson for the day. And then the instruction piece. This is that I do. This is what you are doing as a teacher in instructing your class. It's specifically listing the steps you will take during the lesson to address the content and the objective of the lesson. This is generally the crux to your lesson because most of the content or skill to be learned is going to be covered during this part. A set of directions telling the teacher how to present the lessons. That might be a way that you consider this, but it should be as specific as possible. And this will generally be the longest portion of your lesson.